thanks for joining us, Mark. Tell me a little bit about your. Let's do this. Let's give me a 60-second elevator speech. I know you just talk about pitch and stuff, but you only get 60 seconds to tell me who you are, what you're trying to do, and then we'll go from there.
Awesome. So I'm Mark Warnquist. I'm a CEO and co-founder of a company called InShare. InShare grew out of our experience at Uber. I was at Uber. I'm an Uber alum. So as my co-founder, we were two big parts of the insurance team there. We saw the challenges that are in the on-demand economy or the gig economy with insurance, and we set out to solve them, providing insurance for both the companies and for the workers they depend on.
Excellent. So you talked about an Uber alum. So when you say the word alum, it makes me think it was a good experience at Uber for you, because we've talked to CEOs before and they're like, it wasn't the best. But you don't have to tell me any dirty secrets. But what did you do at Uber, and why did you decide to leave?
So I was what they call a global claims director. So when you have insurance, you have claims, and Uber's, as you know, is worldwide. So I was responsible for everything in that world in 71 countries. So that's what I did. So why did I leave? I left because I saw an opportunity, and Uber was great. Love my time there. Some people say, I say, others say, 1 year there is like 7 years somewhere else. For better or worse, and mostly for better.
Well, that's good to hear. I know currently there is a Showtime show about Uber. I can't remember. Now I'm drawing a blank of the name. I've watched the first episode. I actually got Showtime just to watch it. So it's about Travis's adventure into Uber, and the first episode was pretty intense. I'm not going to lie.
It was pretty intense. So it's called Super Pumped. You're right. I'm a devotee of that, and I watch it every Sunday when it first comes on. So
okay,
very intrigued by it. Some of it's interesting, some of it's a little off the mark,
of course.
But I joined Uber towards the end of that, and that was part of the team that came in to. My job was to scale and mature the organization.
Okay, and your role there was insurance.
Yeah, that's what I did. And I was been a longtime insurance guy. I was a chief claims officer for a while at a $6 billion company. So that's the kind of stuff I do.
Wow. So let's talk a little bit about insurance in the gig economy. We're pretty well versed in it. Let's just keep it at rideshare to start out. The periods 1, 2, and 3. What is covered, what's not. I've been gigging since 2016, so I remember the days when I didn't have a rideshare rider on my policy, and basically was rolling the dice when I was doing rideshare, and didn't like to do that. And the second, I think in Michigan, Farmers was the first people to add the rider. I actually changed my insurance company to get that rider because I needed more protection. So fast forward to 2022, things have changed a lot. In fact, I talked to another company, which I'm sure you're aware of, Buckle, about a month ago about insurance. So tell me what your company does as far as providing that insurance for. Do you provide it for gig workers? Are you the back end of some of these bigger companies? How does that work?
Yeah, so we're a B2B company. So we provide primarily insurance for the companies themselves. And then, as you know, those companies take a bit of the remittance from the drivers to pay for that insurance, right? So that's what we do. I know Marty at Buckle very, very well, and I know what they do, and we're watching that very closely to see if there's an opportunity for us to provide insurance directly to the gig workers in that space. The unit economics for me, I'll just speak for myself, don't quite yet make sense. There is a time, I think, and there is a way for that to make sense, but right now, we're providing commercial insurance for the gig companies, but also we provide worker protections, gig worker protections for gig workers. And coming soon, hopefully, let me knock on something, we want to get into the benefit space because there's a massive protection gap there, and see what we can do to improve the lives of gig workers by giving them benefits that they need and deserve.
So my first thought when you say that, you're going to be basically working for these companies providing the insurance, but then you're trying to do gig worker protection. That just seems like counterintuitive. Maybe I'm missing that point of it, because let's face it, you kind of insurance company is a necessary evil, right? You know what I mean? And Uber just raised their deductible to $2,500, and your goal providing insurance for Uber is going to try to save them money, but yet you're providing benefits to the gig worker too. So I feel like the buckle model would be right up your alley.
It might be someday. It might be, but let me give you the opportunity. Let me just, so when Prop 22 passed, which I know in California, One of the things it did was it mandated that the TNCs and DNCs are required to provide occupational accident coverage, essentially work comp coverage for gig workers. That's what we're going to do. Okay. That's the protection, right? And so there are two ways to provide that kind of coverage. You either do it to the individual or you do it to the company, which benefits for the individual. And when we do it the latter way, it's actually more cost effective, more cost efficient. You get better coverage for the individual worker than the individual buying it on their own nickel, if that makes sense.
Yeah, so you're helping people that have that Prop 22. You're not helping somebody in, Florida or
So yes, sir, I am, but I will do that. So when the gig companies, and we think there's many reasons why gig companies don't need a governmental mandate to provide that kind of work injury protection, that they should do it because it's the right thing to do. And
yes,
and we're there to do the right thing with them. Let's put it that way. That's
good because honestly, I'm on the boat of I want to be an independent contractor. I do gig work full time half the year, and the other year I'm a seasonal worker. So I think there needs to be more involvement from these gig companies, but I don't want to be an employee. So it's just this balance of, yes, I think there needs to be some protections. I think the company should provide them, but I don't want, like you said, the government thing is that just makes it all messy.
Love you. Couldn't do more. Couldn't do more. I mean, I frankly think, look, gig work is not going to go away. Gig companies are not going to go away. This is a problem that needs to be solved. There's a massive protection gap. It's waiting for government to tell you what to do is not the brightest idea. And then there are a number of companies that aren't waiting, right? So we want to be there. We appreciate that we might be a little bit ahead of the curve. That's okay.
Yep.
But it's the right thing to do, and we want to be there. You can't work at Uber and not appreciate gig workers. I know that there are some that would say that Uber does not, but the people that work there, we're taking hundreds of rides, and you hear the stories, and you just want to do something for them. That's the truth.
I really appreciate you saying that because honestly, my job as a podcaster and getting news information out, I'm in all the groups, right? And it's like literally my Facebook feed. That's all it is. And it's everyone bitching. Like I never see anyone being positive about it. Like this whole gas thing, right? So Uber offered a little bit and everyone's complaining about it, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, yo, they don't have to do anything. You all want to be independent contractors, but then they give you 55 cents and you complain about it. I mean, it's just like, yeah, do I want more money? Of course. Give me $100 a ride. I mean, if I could choose whatever I want, but it's like everyone just complaining about it. I'm like, at least they're doing something. And so maybe that's, I think the vibe, about Uber is everyone's complaining, but it is cool to hear that, most of the people there were, they kind of, connected with these drivers and weren't just out to get them.
There's another part to it too, and we should use Uber as a euphemism for a much broader universe of companies, right?
Yeah.
So, I really need to do that, but one of the things that those companies think about is that every single time that they extend a benefit to drivers today, they're at a risk of reclassification, right? And so if we could get to a place where we had some clarity around that, the benefits would come because the risks aren't there. I can tell you that happens every single time. And there are many things that have been on the drawing board to do that in the end, lawyers say, that's a very risky proposition to your overall operating model. So that's another, it's just something that happens that maybe a lot of people don't talk about.
Yeah. So your company is trying to be, and I apologize if I'm missing exactly what it is. I know you're on the Uber end or whatever, DoorDash or whatever. But what was the original company that Uber used? They used one big company for a while early on, but now they've switched.
So they started with many years ago, 13, 14, with James River.
James River, that's right. That's right. Is that what you're trying to be, that James River for those guys?
Yes, I would say so.
Okay.
I would say yes, and more.
Okay.
So,
What do you think about the giant deductible that these companies have for these gig workers? And let's face it, I mean, you're not getting rich by doing gig work. I mean, I know there's people out there that are making six figures, but yeah, they're working 80 hours a week, which is insane. But Uber's was 1,000 at least, and Lyft's was always 2,500. But I'm like, man, some of these gig workers are working paycheck to paycheck, and $2,500 is like, yikes, that is a big pill to swallow.
So let me start by agreeing with you. And I can agree with you for lots of reasons, and not the least of which is that being responsible for the claims operation, and one of the number one things you would hear there, I won't call it gripes, but the number one realities is, you mean I have a $2,500 deductible and this is something that I'm going to pick up myself? So and of course that's well known now as you work through it. I always thought it was an advantage for a company in the war for drivers, which is what's going on today, to be able to offer something different than the others. There's a cost for that, right? And the cost is not inconsequential. It's a really, really large cost, and it's a balance there. So so that's the way I look at it. I do tend to agree with you, and I would like to be able to find a way for us in the royal sense to be able to offer more benefits there. Frankly, I think that's the most important one.
Yeah,
is that deductible on property damage, right, on the APD.
Yeah. What is your thought about, now I have a rider, right? And that covers Lyft and Uber, but I do DoorDash, I do Amazon Flex, I do Shipt. I mean, I barely do rideshare anymore, especially with the pandemic. It kind of faded away and the money was in the delivery aspect of it. Those riders don't cover you for that. So that's where I think Buckle's trying to be like, oh, hold the phone here.
Yeah, I think Buckle's got an interesting proposition, and I know them well. If you're doing DoorDash, you shouldn't have a passenger in the car. You should have a burrito in the car, right?
True.
So that's and you are covered as the driver there. So that's true, right? So and if you're doing Amazon Flex, you're going to be covered by the Amazon Flex program, et cetera. I think Buckle has a point. I'll be honest with you. I really do think Buckle has a point. But the reason I haven't done it is because you as a gig worker, or me as a gig worker, needs a financial reason to go out and buy that insurance policy.
Yes.
When you're already getting an insurance policy that's covering you from DoorDash, Lyft, Uber, et cetera, et cetera. You need a reason for that. And I haven't seen enough of a financial reason, a unit economics, to make it make sense for you to buy it at scale. The moment it does, I will be there, I promise.
Well, here's the problem. I don't know the exact policies from DoorDash and Grubhub, but they're not great. I mean, I ride full coverage. My car's paid for, and I still ride full coverage because I want me as a family man, right? Okay, I have kids and all that stuff. I don't want to trust DoorDash to be there for me, but So for me, it would be a financial thing. Like, I'd be like, yeah, I want the most protection as possible. But I understand that they're there. But I'll be honest with you. I don't trust these gig companies at that much, and I'd be worried that my bodily injury would be in charge by someone at DoorDash. I mean, come on. Like, that's scary to me as you try to communicate with them and the things that they do mess up on a regular basis. So yes, they're all coverage. I had a person in my group that, used Amazon Flex. It was fine. She wasn't hurt, but the whole process was totally fine. I'd be more worried about the injury part of that.
Yeah, so first off, I agree with you, and your view of insurance is a view that I have myself, and if I were in your shoes, I would be doing exactly the same thing, right?
Yeah.
So people don't think of it that way, and they think that there is coverage there that's going to be okay for me. I'm not going to say you're the exception to the rule, but you may not be the rule either.
I agree.
Right.
Yeah, I agree. These young kids out here, they don't care about insurance. They just care about making the next buck, And
I think there's a way, and this is what we're trying to do, and what we're trying to be is innovative in this space to make it more cost effective for companies, and I'm not going to name names now, but for companies to offer broader coverage and broader protections. That's There's a need for that. I think you're pointing to that. It's also very expensive. So if there are ways to do that, to address that expense, that's one of the things that we think we can offer.
So going back to what you said earlier, the benefits you want to provide gig workers, can you expand on that a little bit? Obviously, you're trying to get out of the whole Prop 22 California thing. I know we talked about that earlier. But what is your goal as far as just talk a little bit about what your goals are to provide for the gig worker?
So gig workers, and I'm sure you hear this on your in Facebook and otherwise, right? There's a collection of gig workers that have access to benefits from another job or from a spouse or whatever it is. But there is a very substantial percentage of gig workers that aren't eligible for those protections, and they really have protection gaps. You know, and I know that the Affordable Care Act has offered many great subsidies for folks to do that. And still, the take-up rate on those is not as high as it could be. People could be getting much better protection for not a lot of money. And so I want to be able to solve for that. And I know there are others in this world that are solving for that. But I think there's another way to in addition to that, offer benefits that you would get if you were employed at scale for price points that make sense for the gig worker. So I think that's what I want to do. And I want to do it in an easy way, easy, embedded way, digital way, because you are a digital user and you know how to use that. But you also likely need a bit of advice as you walk through that to make the right decisions for you. So all the feedback, all the customer feedback, talking with a lot of folks like yourself and your constituents, tell us there are a few things that are needed in this market, and we're trying to build a product solution to solve for that.
So how are you going to reach the same person that we just talked about that's not going to buy that extra insurance and is just like, I don't need to worry about that? Like, I mean, what price point are you going to be able to hit? So, for example, with Uber, I do add the little extra, I can't remember, I think it's disability, so they take it out of each ride, even for Uber Eats, even if I'm doing food delivery. And it's easy, right? I don't even think about it, and I love it, so if I do need it, it's there. But that's a really low price point. But, I think it's only an extra $10,000 for insurance extra. I can't even remember. It's been so long, but
so same concepts, similar concepts, embedded concepts, easy to use, a couple of clicks and you have it. There it is. Much more can be done in that space. And if you do it at scale, the way we're talking about, now you don't have the inefficiencies of trying to come to you and 10,000 people like you, which is very inefficient, and the expense goes up. So therefore the expense of the insurance goes up. So if I could find a tech-based funnel to serve you the way you just described, then I can get a price point that you're going to like.
That's true. You're not spending the millions of dollars on marketing because you already have 2 million drivers in the queue. And so you're like, hey, here it is. You can do it, and we can offer it for a couple of bucks a month or something, whatever it is.
That is, you just put your finger on the idea. That's it in a nutshell.
That's really cool. I do like that. Like I said, I try to get as much insurance as I can within reason, but I think it's super beneficial, and it's challenging with risk, right? And I say these young kids. I'm 46, so it's not like I'm that old, but I look at these younger kids at 2022, and they just don't care. I'm like, man, you should care. This stuff is dangerous. It could wreck you financially if you don't have enough insurance. So I'm glad you're doing that. Anything else in the protecting the gig worker space that you're working on other than just that part of the health benefit?
Well, the health benefit, the injury protections, and I'm trying to get to a place where we can lower insurance costs, which then companies have a trade-off. They can either lower their costs or they can offer greater benefits.
Okay.
In my view, as you know, in today's world, that's why you saw what you're seeing in New York with Uber, right? Today, there's a war for drivers. There's a lack of supply. Anything that can be done to attract drivers to a platform is a smart thing in my mind. As you probably also know, that some of the bonuses that are out there, they work for a period of time, but they don't work permanently. Right. And you really want to get stickiness with a gig driver, treat them right and give them what they need.
Yeah, it's funny you brought that up because we're all just humans, this gig workers. And I thought about when Uber used to have, this is so simple, right? They had a deal with Subway. And once a week, you could get a sub and a cookie and a drink. I love that. And I'm like, sometimes you don't even need more money. You just need to know that the company's thinking about you. And when they took that away, I was like, man, that was such a good deal. And I think, you're hitting it on the head where it's like just a little bit of money or just a little bit of caring goes a long ways for people. It's not always about the money. I was happy with the gas thing. I was like, hey, we're independent contractors. They can tell you to get bent, and they're not. So they don't have to do this. So I just love that thought process of, caring for the gig worker a little bit, and a little bit of kindness goes a long ways. So
I agree. And I think we just have to. We're here to stay.
Right.
Let's make it work. But it can't be a one-way street. It's got to work for all, right? And that's what we're trying to do.
So what's in the next couple-year plan? Are you obviously you had some pitch meetings you said today, so we're not quite ready to present to the gig companies yet, like Uber, Lyft, DoorDash?
So we are.
Okay.
We will be soon. You'll see some announcements from us soon.
Excellent.
You mentioned the pitches, so we're a startup. We're about 23 people now and growing, and so we've got huge goals ahead of us, huge things to accomplish in the next couple of years. And I'm in what they call Series A pitching and talking to venture capitalists and others and telling them about our stories, some of which you've heard here today, and how we're going to do this. And so you're going to hear much more from us in the months and weeks and months to come.
That is awesome. Mark, I appreciate the time. How can people, if they want to actually talk to you or get more information about what you guys are doing?
They can always email me. I'm at very simple, mark@inshare.com. That's the easiest way.
Okay.
And I'll get back to you as soon as I can.
All right. I appreciate it. Thank you so much. And this has been interesting. I went into it, I was like, what is this going to be about? I kind of did my research. And so I'm really glad that you took the time to talk.
Me too.
All right.
Good to meet you.
Yep. Have a good night. Thank you.
Hey, you too. Take care of yourself.
Bye.